Joe Biden sees sub 40% approval rating. And, well, there's a reason for that. There's a very, very simple and good reason for that. But we will talk just a bit about what's going on with that and where we go from there. In other Joe Biden news, Joe Biden and his posse of media people come out desperately to tell you how bad the new Florida bill is and how it's going to kill transgender and homosexual students. It's really not, and we'll actually read all 4 pages of the bill together right here on air, so definitely we will come back and check that out. In other news, Cori Bush won't drop the defund the police slogan, even though Dems are saying it's a bad idea at this point. And if we can get down, well, no, we'll stay up here. And Governor Hochul, along with many, many, many other municipalities, get ready to come back and start repealing the coronavirus mandates, not because they think that they're ineffective, it's just that they're not popular anymore, and we're coming into a midterm. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Ed Heads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have got a bunch of stuff to get to today. I know Mr. Zed's over there on the Instagram side, but apparently there's no more audio over here. Let me double check that. I don't know how to get back to where the audio is. Well, I guess we might have to power through, but yeah, there's apparently no audio over on the Instagram side. That's lame. I guess we'll figure that out as we go, but we have got I can't get access on the controls either, so I don't know how to fix that, but I'm sorry, Mr. Zed. I guess you might have to come back over to the Twitch or the YouTube side because, well, if that's going to be a problem, then we're going to have to figure out what's going on with Instagram. We got to get into the news, you guys. We have got so much news to get to over here, and yeah, the Biden thing is just hilarious. That's great. Let's get the live chat up, see what you guys are doing here. But yeah, let's get into it over here on Contemporary. But before we get started, do make sure you guys go check out TurnsandPagesProductions.com. Turns and Pages Productions is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We are set, ready to go. We just need the funding to get started, and a new fundraiser will be coming up very soon. But once we are up and running, we will carry great shows such as the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown for Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, the Freckles and Brit Show, rather, the new upcoming project with Britt and Sean Hickman, and the Porch Boys. So go check out all those shows. It's going to be a great time. New fundraiser coming soon. New links will be coming soon for that as well. So go and check that out. It's going to be an awesome time. TurnsandPagesProductions.com. All right, let's go have a look at what we have going on in the main news of the day. Looking at the Dow. The Dow had itself a fairly good up day yesterday. 35,768 0.06 points. That is up 305.28 points, or 0.86 points throughout the day. Looks like some of the things are settling off, and people were buying things while they were on sale once again. It was fairly steady throughout the day, just kind of stayed up and stayed about the same place that it was. A little bit of a roller coaster at the end. Do keep in mind the inflation reports and the new Fed taper are both going to be on deck. The inflation reports coming up in the next couple days. The Fed taper coming in March, so we will see what happens with the stocks. Check your 401ks to make sure. Bitcoin is up to 44,795 US dollars and 30 US cents. That is up 377 US dollars even, or 0.85% throughout the day yesterday, which looks like there are people that are trying to get themselves back into the workforce, and some of them who do have some new disposable income. Remember, all of your savings into Bitcoin. This is not official financial advice. This is me teasing and trolling the former libertarian candidate for president. All of your savings and everything into Bitcoin, because that is the only way to live a truly libertarian lifestyle. Looking in at your scrap metal prices, all three major metals are up right now. Copper, steel, and aluminum. Looking in at the individual plays, brass is down, but all other copper plays are up, including brass shells also up. Steel is green all the way across the board. Aluminum is green all the way across the board. All the individual plays that we read throughout the day are all green except for brass, just regular brass. Looking in at some of the individual plays, those are a little bit more mixed. Electric motors are down, ballasts are up, lead is up, but batteries are down. Catalytic converters catalytic converters did not all turn onto the upswing. 4 out of the 5 catalytic converters that we look at every day turn upwards, but the large GM cats have turned back down. Compressors are up, alternators are down, carbide is up, hard drives are down, but motherboards are up. Power supplies, low-grade boards, and PC towers are all down. That's what we see coming up out of the markets. By the way, we have 2 IBD articles today, and that's kind of awesome. Number 1, first one coming in the finance sector. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones Futures market rally at key levels as CPI inflation report looms. Disney, Twilio, Datadog soar. This is from Ed Carson. Dow Jones Futures were a little changed early Thursday, along with S&P 500 Futures and NASDAQ Futures. With the CPI inflation report looming large, Dow giant Walt Disney headlined after-hours earnings. The stock market rally had another strong session on Wednesday. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ Composite came right up to last week's highs. Key resistance area, Fortinet, flashed a buy signal, a rare growth stock in play as many of Wednesday's big movers were beaten down former leaders. Disney, MGM, Twilio, Molina Health reported earnings late Wednesday. Datadog topped views early Thursday, with Expedia on tap early Thursday. Disney jumped in extended trade, while Datadog and Twilio skyrocketed, but both are well off highs. MGM rose modestly near a breakout. MOH stock was not active overnight. But the big news before Thursday's market open will be the January Consumer Price Index. The Labor Department will release the CPI report at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Economists expect to see the Consumer Price Index up 7.3% versus a year earlier, above December's 39-year high of 7%. Core inflation should hit 5.9%, up from 5.5%. Why are they saying this is good news? Month to month, economists see the Consumer Price Index up 0.5% overall, and for core CPI, the Federal Reserve is going to start raising interest rates in March, with some speculation of a 50 basis point hike. So a hot inflation reading could trigger stock market selling and spiking treasury yields, but a tame inflation reading could fuel a relief rally in stocks and bond prices. So we'll see what happens with the inflation. What did they say that was due? 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, so it actually hit a few minutes ago. We'll probably see some update for it on the CNBC article. Fortinet stock rose 4.8% Wednesday to $329.84, reclaiming its 50-day line. Though on the light volume, investors could have taken position in Fortinet either as an early entry or as an IBD long-term leader. After this week, Fortinet stock should have a base with 371.87. By a point, the relative strength line for Fortinet is just below record highs, according to MarketSmith analysis. Cybersecurity peer Palo Alto has a similar chart to that of Fortinet, but Palo Alto has earnings on tap next week, raising the risks. Fortinet joined the IBD leaderboard on Wednesday, with Expedia already on that list as earnings options plays. Fortinet stock is also an IBD long-term leader. Let's look at the futures. Dow futures rose 0.2% versus fair value with a boost from Disney. S&P 500 futures lost less than 0.1%, and NASDAQ futures fell 0.1%. The 10-year Treasury yield was little changed at 1.93%. U.S. crude futures rose about 1%. The 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time inflation data and weekly jobless claims figures will likely swing Dow futures before the open. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Let's see what CNBC has to say, and then we will get right into the big news of the day from CNBC. Dow futures tick higher on Disney boost as market awaits key inflation report. From Jesse Pound and Tanaya Makil. Futures were mixed on Thursday ahead of a key inflation data expected later in the day that's expected to show price increases rising at their fastest annual pace since the early 1980s. Dow Industrial Average rose 77 points or 0.2%, largely on the back of Disney. S&P 500 futures were flat. NASDAQ futures fell less than 0.1%. Shares of the Dow 30 component, Disney, jumped nearly 8% in pre-market trading after the company reported a quarterly earnings beat and doubling of revenue from its parks, experiences, and consumer products division. Uber gained 5.75% in extended trading after reporting a revenue beat and bounce back from Omicron-induced challenges. Elsewhere, can we say Omicron again? Or am I going to get deranked for that? Do I have to go back and say, Ermagerd! Ermagerd! The Ermagerd girl that got popular again because of the variant that shall not be named. Elsewhere, Twitter also rose in pre-market, jumping 4% after the company announced $4 billion in stock buyback program. Coca-Cola shares were up nearly 2% after the soft drink giant reported earnings and revenue that beat Wall Street estimates. Investors were preparing for Thursday's Consumer Price Index report, which is expected to show headline inflation for January at the highest level since 1982. Headline inflation, including food and energy costs, is expected to rise by 0.4% or 7.2% year over year. The 10-year Treasury yield, by the way, has jumped above 1.98% after inflation numbers come in hotter than expected. Let's just see what that is. $7.5%. We've actually got that on deck right now because we're reading this, the eighth one here. Let's skip this, the rest of what we're doing here, and let's just look at what's here. Inflation has risen 7.5% over the past year, even more than expected, and the highest since 1982. Most popular president in history. That compared to the Dow Jones estimate of 7.2% for the closely watched inflation gauge. It was the highest reading since February of 1982. Stripping out volatile gas and grocery costs, the CPI increased 6% compared to the estimate of 5.9%. The monthly rates also came in hotter than expected, with headline and core CPI both rising 0.6% and compared to the estimates for a 0.4% increase on both measures. The stock market futures declined following the report. While the government bond yields rose sharply, the benchmark 10-year Treasury yield most recently yielded 1.97%. So a hit like that in just a few minutes can jump all these numbers all the way back around and make an article like the one we were just reading completely obsolete. That's what we see coming back up out of this. Let's get into the main news of the day. And this number, if they pull out another poll coming up here in the near future, is probably going to drop even lower in the next couple days. Let's get into that. From Fox News, Biden approval rating drops below 40% for the first time in an average of major polls. From Kyle Morris. Approval of President Biden's performance in the White House continues to weaken as the admin works to deal with the Ukraine border conflict, rising inflation, the continuing pinko-pox pandemic, and chaos at the Mexican border. For the first time since taking office, Biden's approval rating, based on an accumulation of polling data, fell below 40%, a real clear politics average of all the most recent national surveys measuring Biden's standing put the president's approval rating at 39% and his disapproval at 54%. Biden has also found himself the center of a Russia-Ukraine border conflict in Europe. No, that is a conflict that the Biden administration is trying desperately to make happen, but it's never going to happen. They keep trying. Last month, Biden predicted President Putin would advance into Ukraine, saying, my guess he'll move in. He has to do something. Bitch, he's got nothing but time from where he's sitting. Biden continues to take heat from Americans over rising gas prices, leading to his own party to introduce a proposal to temporarily suspend the federal gas tax in order to help blunt the financial pain of surging prices at the pump. Ooh. Come on. Other costs, including energy bills, are also having an impact on Americans. New York residents say their bills have doubled in the latest wrinkle to red-hot inflation. Fox News reached out to the White House in an effort to see what factors may have contributed to Biden's sinking average polling numbers, but did not receive an immediate response. So, Fox News, because they're the Republican network, and they're the punching bag for Democrats because they're so evil. They're so Trump adjacent. But when we didn't like Bush, they were so Bush adjacent, and they're so Mitch McConnell adjacent. Fox News is a controlled oppo group, and I mean, even they're going to come back out of this and say this because they're going to tell you what it is that the mainstream wants you to say. Let's look at this. Now, of course, they're going to come and bring up rising inflation, otherwise they can't be seen as the Trump-centric network that everybody hates. But, you know, they're going to try to attribute this to the Ukraine border and the continuing pandemic. That's not what this is. Now, these things do play a role in this. And do keep in mind, remember, I think most everybody has figured out at this point that they are trying to fuel what's happening with the Ukraine. They are actually trying to fuel. They're actively trying to get this to happen. So they've got a war coming into both the midterms and the 2024 presidential election. Because wartime presidents do better. That is something statistically we can go back through the years and look at. Wartime presidents typically do better, no matter how much they suck. HW. But here's the reality of what's happening here. Joe Biden made several secondary promises that all of his audience heard. Joe Biden promised to end student debt. He promised to eliminate, to stroke of a pen, get rid of it all. That he was going to cripple the healthcare companies so we could move into a single-payer system. Because it's ridiculous that hard-working people should have to go without insurance, or have to pick between healthcare and having something to eat. That he was going to work for the working man, bring jobs back here, open the economy back up, and yes, put an end to the virus. But those were all his secondary promises. The primary promise of Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. was, and that was the primary plank of his platform. Hey man, vote for me. I'm not the other guy, man. Come on. Come on. And Joe Biden is 13 months into an administration where there's no other guy. Now, if you go over onto Twitter and you talk to people on Twitter, and this is what actually started rolling this in my head. Because, like, if you follow Freckled Liberty and listen to all the people that are detractors of her, if you look down at Freckled Liberty and the people that come up here, Freckled Liberty was no supporter of the former president. I think she enjoyed him, but I don't think she was a supporter of him, and if I remember correctly, she didn't vote for him. That's one difference between her and I, if that is correct, if that's accurate information. I did vote for him. kicking and screaming. But I did vote for the former president. Was not happy about it, but I did it. But when we look in, I mean, that was it. When we look in at the replies that come in, when Freckled Liberty detracts against Biden, when she detracts against Biden's mandates, the mandates of Democratic governors, that's the first thing we hear is, Trump did this though, and Trump did that. The people on Twitter are trying desperately to continue to make this about Trump, because that was literally the only thing out of the platform. A lot of other pundits will tell you it's because they're terrified that Trump is going to run in 2024, which some of them are, because they've been told to. I don't think he is. I don't really honestly think that he's going to. I think he's fucking sick. I think he's going to be the kingmaker. I don't think he's going to run for president. I could be wrong. There's like a 50-50 shot that he does. I know a lot of people are out there saying it's 80-20, 90-10, 95-5, or anything like that. I think it's 50-50. But the point that I was getting at when I said that, though, is the fact that, yes, for almost the entirety of it, anytime you point out a Biden failing, his simp followers or his bot followers, whichever you want to come back out and say, are trying to make this about Trump. That was literally the only platform that Biden ran on. Vote for me, I'm not Trump. And now he has nothing, and he knows it. He can't eliminate student debt data. He'll lose his banking supporters. He can't give you Medicare for all because that will A, eliminate an entire industry and put millions of people out of a job. And B, piss off his other banking donors. The people who are actually funding him. He's a corporate bought and paid for candidate. He always has been. Who had one strength, and that strength was the fact that the mainstream media came back and slammed the former president as hard as they could for as often as they could. Now that that's gone away, he has literally less than nothing, and he knows it. He knows it goddamn well. So this has nothing to do with his recent failings and gaps or anything. This is the fact that he had no platform. And by the way, as Brady Leonard from the No Gimmicks podcast says, you can put that in your government-issued Joe Biden crack pipe and smoke it. I saw that probably about 5 minutes before I went live, and I said, we are finding a place for that on the morning show. Let's actually look at the numbers here. We noticed you're blocking ads. Go away. And what's interesting about this, by the way, is, I mean, the difference in approval and disapproval numbers. I went to the dark side. I listened to Tim Pool yesterday. I don't do it often. But Tim Pool actually had the Trump graph up where it showed where Trump's approval rating and disapproval rating were throughout his presidency. And they never intersected like this. But I mean, we can look at, like, at the very beginning of the Biden presidency where Biden's disapproval was at 35%. And it was all the most rock-ribbed conservatives who could be polled. Once again, probably does not reflect the population at large, and a lot of these polls are very, very cherry-picked, but... And furthermore, looking in at the aggregated polls, but I mean, just this big cross right off in the middle, as Biden's approval just continues to plummet, as disapproval comes rising up and screaming up through the top. Now, the big one that really hit him, I mean, we had some big 45 ones fall off and that was it, but I mean, we're looking at some of these can be tossed out. Even the bad ones, like IBD, TIPP, 38. But that's among 1,355 adults. Adults, are they convicted felons? Can they even vote? Are they going to vote? Anything else like that? Or the Monmouth one here, that's 735, but they're registered voters. The IBD TIPP is kind of an outlier from what I've been seeing as long as we've gone. And same as this Economist YouGov one here, because typically the RV ones have been trending lower. So those are the people that are actually going to vote for him, which that is bad news for Biden. And the A ones are just whoever they can stop in the street. Yes, I know, I'm blocking ads. Fuck you. And those actually typically tend to go higher. In fact, the one that fell off that really brought him down below 40, if I remember correctly, I actually have to think back and I've been checking this regularly too. The one that fell off recently, that was 45, that held him up, I believe was an A. But I mean, if you look at the sample, like if you do go into RCP and look into this for yourself, you'll see either RV, LV, or A. A is just adults. Anybody they can stop on the street, anybody they can get to pick up the phone. LV is likely voters, so somebody who has answered into another poll and said, yes, I'm most likely going to vote. Or RV, actual registered voters who are confirmed and saying, yes, I am going to vote. And yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm still somewhat sure is a plant. Because she does still say the right thing almost a little bit too perfectly at just the right time. It does seem scripted sometimes. Definitely. Although she's kind of fallen off the face of the earth lately. I've noticed that too. But with that, let's actually get into more of the news here. This was such a bad set of numbers for Biden that IBD got into this. Biden approval rating crashes as Democrats cool, investors turn negative. From Jed Graham. And this is affecting the markets. I'm going to drop this down a little bit. That's a little bit too loud. President Biden's approval rating dove to the lowest of his presidency, close to President Donald Trump's, standing as he exited office, the February IBD TIPP poll finds. Biden's stalled agenda has cooled Democratic support, while approval of his economic policies is sinking amid ongoing inflation concerns and sudden stock market turbulence. The February IBD TIPP poll finds that Biden's approval rating fell 4.8% to 44.4 over the past month. The index measures indicates that 44.4% of adults surveyed approve of Biden's job performance, excluding those who were unsure or declined to state an opinion. Oh, that's theirs. Okay. So I don't know if this is an old article. What's the date on this? 2/7. Okay. So this is a couple days old. But yeah, I mean, the numbers are getting so bad for Biden that even IBD has got to get into this and say how this is going to be happening to the market. All right, from the Hill, because now that these numbers are out, everybody's got to come back and talk about them. This is also from a couple days ago, though. What Biden's approval rating says about Democrats' chances in the 2022 midterms. And again, keep in mind that this is all coming out right before the numbers drop to below 40. By the Hill staff, Democrats are facing the headwinds of history as they race to save their narrow House and Senate majorities later this year, even before they factor in the challenges of an out-of-control pandemic and rising inflation. That's because voters typically punish the party in power when a new president faces his first midterm election. In the past century, the president's party has picked up seats in the midterm elections only twice, in 1934 and 2002. Why the fuck did W win? He sucks. In both of those occasions, the incumbent president, Franklin Roosevelt, and George W. were hugely popular. Nobody knows why. On either of their cases, by the way. You know, internment camp FDR or bombing brown kids W. Roosevelt had guided the country through the end of the Depression, and Bush was riding a tide of patriotism after the September 11th terror attacks. That's not the case today, and in fact, President Biden's approval ratings look more like those of Reagan, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, or Donald Trump, all of whom saw their parties suffer steep losses in midterm elections. Democrats need Biden to be popular if they have any hope of retaining their slim majorities. There's still plenty of time left before voters start voting, but history is not on their side. And that sub-40 approval rating, I mean, it might be time to go back and lock Biden in the basement. But instead, he is saying things that he probably shouldn't be saying either. Let's move on. Talk about other issues of the day. From the USA Today, White House denounces Florida's Don't Say Gay bill as hateful after DeSantis backs it. Because of course they did. And they're actually trying to make this into DeSantis' bill too, which I think is hilarious because Ron DeSantis, as most of you know, is not a legislator. He didn't write this bill. He seems to think it's a good idea, and we'll go through it. Because I got the document. So we'll go through it and we'll figure out what's actually in here that the world is trying to freak out about. But of course, I'm pretty positive that this is, for the most part, just a way to take another shot at Ron DeSantis to try to get him out of office. I'm sorry, Moron DeSantis. But let's read here from USA Today. Did I get the author? Yes, from Matthew Brown. The Biden admin has denounced the bill being advanced by Florida Republicans that would ban the discussion of gender identity and sexual orientation in K-12 schools. The bill orders that schools may not encourage classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in K-12 schools or in a manner that is not age appropriate. Holy shit, they're actually being honest about this. Or developmentally appropriate for students. The bill does not offer definitions on what would be appropriate, which they probably should, but conservative advocates have argued that the bill advances parental rights in education by allowing parents to sue public schools they believe are discussing LGBTQ issues. Should the bill become law on Monday, Florida Governor DeSantis voiced his support for the bill. Opponents have called it the Don't Say Gay legislation that would create a more hostile environment for LGBTQ students in the state. The bill would build upon a 2021 law dubbed the Parents' Bill of Rights by its proponents, which bars government agencies from interfering with a parent's right to direct the upbringing, education, health care, and mental health of their children. The Biden admin has come out strongly against the proposal on social media. I want every member of the LGBTQ plus community, which that right there tells you he didn't write this. Especially the kids, man, who will be impacted by this hateful bill. To know that you are loved and accepted just as you are, President Biden's handlers wrote in a tweet on Tuesday that ended a criticism tweeted out by the White House's account. I have your back, man. And my administration will continue to fight for the protections and safety you deserve. So, that's the tweet. Chasten Buttigieg has to get into this because, of course, he's Chasten Buttigieg. This will kill kids! Alright, let's read what's actually in this bill. 4 pages, quick read, let's see what's here. This is going to be a little bit dry, but this is worth it for the public record because people like Brooklyn Dad Defiant, like Joe Biden, like the USA Today only want you to know about what's in this bill based on the headline that they fed you, so you can come back and be outraged and spread their message and get other people to go back and read their publication. I'm actually going to give you the source material right here, and you decide what's in this bill. And yes, again, this is going to be a little bit dry. House Bill 1557, a bill to be entitled the Act Relating to Parental Rights in Education, amending Section 1001.42 FS, requiring district school boards to adopt procedures that comport with certain provisions of law for notifying a student's parents of specified information, requiring such procedures to reinforce the fundamental rights of parents to make decisions regarding the upbringing and control of their children in a specified manner, prohibiting the procedures from prohibiting a parent from accessing certain records, providing instruction, prohibiting school district from adopting procedures or student support forms that require school district personnel to withhold from a parent specified information, or that encourage or have the effect of encouraging a student to withhold from a parent such information, providing an exception prohibiting school district personnel from discouraging or prohibiting parental notification and involvement in critical decisions affecting the student's mental, emotional, or physical well-being, prohibiting school districts from encouraging classroom discussions about sexual orientation and gender identity in primary grade levels or in a specified manner, authorizing a parent to bring an action against the school district to obtain a declaratory judgment that a school district procedure or or practice violates certain provision of law, providing for the additional award of injunctive relief, damages, and reasonable attorney fees and court costs to certain parents requiring certain training developed or provided by a school district to adhere to standards established by the Department of Education, requiring the department to review and update as necessary specified materials by a certain date, providing an effective date. Be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Florida, Section 1, Paragraph C, is added to subsection 8 of Section 1001.42 Florida statutes to read 1001.42 Powers and Duties of District School Board. The District School Board, acting as a board, shall exercise all powers and perform all duties as listed below. Student welfare. Underlined are additions, by the way, in accordance with the rights of parents enumerated in subsections 1002.20 and 1014.04. Adopt procedures for notifying a student's parent if there's a change in student services or monitoring related to the student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being, and the school's ability to provide a safe and supportive learning environment for the student. The procedures must reinforce the fundamental right of parents to make decisions regarding the upbringing and control of their children by requiring school district personnel to encourage the student to discuss issues relating to his or her well-being with his or her parents, or to seek permission to discuss or facilitate discussions of issues with parents. So the procedures must comply with Section 1002.22, subsection 2, and may not prohibit a parent from accessing any of his or her minor child's education records created, maintained, or used by the school district. This paragraph does not limit or alter any obligation of school district personnel to report suspected abuse, abandonment, or neglect, as those terms are defined in Section 39.01. 2. A school district may not adopt procedures or student support forms that require school district personnel to withhold from a parent information about his or her student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being, or a change in related services or monitoring, or that encourage or have the effect of encouraging a student to withhold from a parent such information unless a reasonably prudent person would believe that such a disclosure would result in abuse, abandonment, or neglect, as those are terms defined in Section 39.01. School district personnel may not discourage or prohibit parental notifications of and involvement in critical decisions affecting a student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being. Last page, I promise. 3. A school district may not encourage classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in primary grade levels or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students. 4. A parent of a student may bring an action against the school district to obtain a declaratory judgment that the school district procedure or practice violates this paragraph and seek injunctive relief. A court may award damages and shall award reasonable attorney fees and court costs to a parent who receives a declaratory or injunctive relief. 5. Student support services, training developed or provided by a school district to a school district personnel must adhere to student services guidelines, standards, and frameworks established by the Department of Education. Section 2, by June 30th, 2023, the Department of Education shall review and update, as necessary, school counseling, frameworks, and standards, educator practices and professional conduct principles, and other student services personnel guidelines, standards, or frameworks in accordance with the requirements of this Act. Section 3, this Act shall take effect on July 1st of 2022. There is a lot of very dry legalese here, but what this sums out to is essentially this. Now, we heard the fat lady on Libs of TikTok that, what was it, Mix K? I'm Mix K! I'm neither a boy or a girl! I'm so glad you came out to me with this. No, we don't have to tell your parents about this right now. But this will be our little secret. This bill prohibits that, which I think is a good thing. Because a parent should know what's happening with this. And, I mean, as long as... we'll use Mix K as the example here. Because she's sitting back here trying to tell people that she's neither a boy or a girl. In a situation where kids don't understand that. They know they have a brother or a sister, and mommy and daddy. like each other very much or got really, really drunk in a bar one night. And that's what they know. And discussions, again, unless it's about how you pee, discussions about sex, like your parts, that's all that it is. That's it. It's nothing else. It's not about who touches who. It's not about how you feel. It's not about, I don't know what the difference is between a boy and a girl, but I want to be a boy this week and a girl this week. It's not about any of that. In the primary grade levels, like what they're talking about, and I would like to actually see what is defined as a primary grade level in Florida law, because I would assume that is K through like 5 or something. Because some of this does become appropriate in high school age when people are starting to figure themselves out. But the other side of this is the parents are allowed to sue the school system. If you get a mixed K out there that says, I don't feel like I'm a boy or a girl, and I will keep your secret from your parents, okay? This will just be between us. This puts the parents at the center of this, and this does have additions into it for neglect and abuse, including the fact of where if a student did come out to a teacher and there would be a reasonable suspicion that the student would be abused by the parents, if he were to come out as gay at home, where they can bring into a social services worker or a social worker and make that decision from there. There do seem to be provisions for this. So this is actually a fairly well-crafted bill. And of course, this is another one where they come out and allow the enforcement of it to be by civil lawsuit rather than criminal penalty. I've had discussions about that with other people. I think that some more of this is a good idea because it's directly a aggrieved party. It does leave the state somewhat out of it, and it does require a sentimental judge to be in favor of the parents in order for something to have it, rather than a judge who is trying to rule for the state that also works for the state. I like some of this. I like some of the way this is going. There are problems with this bill. I understand that. But like 75% of the way through, this is written fairly well. All right, let's keep going. So, an interesting thing to note about this, when I went back and looked at this, because I had a different tweet up here for this, but it got deleted. And then I went down looking through for Bob Saget news on the trending, and found out that a lot of the mainstream news tweets got deleted in the last 9 hours. Which makes me even more suspicious about this. But CNN Breaking News says Bob Saget's family says authorities have attributed his death to head trauma. Let's read on. From CNN Entertainment, Bob Saget died from head trauma, family says, from Lisa Respers, France. Bob Saget, who was found dead in his Orlando, Florida hotel room last month, died from the result of head trauma, according to a statement from his family. The authorities have determined that Bob passed from head trauma. They've concluded that he accidentally hit the back of his head on something, thought nothing of it, and went to sleep, which I would love to figure out, if he was alone in his hotel room, how they determined that he thought nothing of it. The statement said no drugs or alcohol were involved. Okay, did the forensics people come back out and find out what it was that he hit the back of his head on? The family added that they've been overwhelmed with the incredible outpouring of love from Bob's fans, which have been a great comfort to us, and for which we are eternally grateful. As we continue to mourn together, we ask that everyone remember to love and laughter that Bob brought to this world, and the lessons that he taught all of us. To be kind to everyone, to let the You guys never listened to his stand-up, did you? He's Bob Saget, not Danny Tanner. To be kind to everyone, to let the people you love know you love them, and to face difficult times with hugs and laughter, this statement added. The Fuller House star, 65, had been on a comedy tour at the time of his death. Let's actually have a listen to what CNN has to say about this, too. Because I'm kind of curious, because they've got a minute and a half of material for it.
What do you look for? And you mentioned the idea of a slurred speech. You mentioned the idea of feeling confusion. Is there a certain window of time? I know if you have a stroke, there's sort of read the signs, and there's a window of opportunity. Blood thinners are supposed to be provided in some way to give you a chance for survival. Is there a window in which you need to get to the hospital if you're feeling this way?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this is these bleeds, which are on top of the brain, typically, if that's what he suffered from, which it sounds like, if you get to the hospital quickly within, with stroke, it's really within 3 hours. With this sort of thing, you have to think about getting there as quickly as you can as well. If you can take the pressure off of the brain, and simply by removing some bone, removing this blood collection, take that pressure off the brain as quickly as possible, you greatly increase the chances of survival. I mean, it's just as simple as that. It's just basically, it's a pressure issue at that point. Again, the brain has nowhere to go because it's encased by bone. So, I think the message is, again, I don't want to frighten people, and people do bump their heads all the time, and it turns out to be nothing. But if it's a severe blow to the head, if you have some of these symptoms, again, I'll just say, worsening headache, confusion, nausea, vomiting, slurring of speech, anything else that's just unusual like that, if you're on blood thinners, and especially if you're an older person, those really do increase your chance of developing something like this. Again, it's not common. I don't want to unnecessarily frighten people, but those are some indicators.
I am unnecessarily frightened. No, I mean, it's totally, he just hit his head. He hit his head and fell down, and suddenly he's brain bleed. So we never have to talk about this again, right? Yeah, I want to see those X's in the chat. Press X to doubt. Come on, guys. Press X to doubt. So, there's more to this going on than a lot of people think that there is. And the fact that they're trying to sweep this aside as just a regular head trauma and don't ask any more questions, you bigot. You know what that does? That raises more questions for me. Press X to doubt. I'm getting those X's in. It wasn't a stroke, KTZed. It was a brain bleed. He allegedly hit his head and then just went to bed and didn't think anything of it. I don't believe any of this. I don't believe a second of this. All right, let's keep going on to some follow-up stories here. From the New York Post. Trump tells Rogan to stop apologizing during a Spotify podcast saga. From Emily Crane. Former President Donald Trump said Joe Rogan should stop apologizing to lefty lunatics amid his ongoing Spotify podcast controversy. Joe Rogan. Wow, I've got a little bit too much stuff in my throat to do the proper Trump. Joe Rogan is an interesting and popular guy, but he's got to stop apologizing to the fake news and radical left maniacs and lunatics, Trump said in a statement on Monday night. How many ways can you say you're sorry, Joe? Just go about what you do so well, and don't let them make you look weak and frightened. Weak is the weakest person, okay? You look weak, and you don't want to look weak, not in front of these people. Okay, I know about looking weak in front of these people. It is the worst. That is not you, and it's not what it'll ever be. Rogan issued an apology Saturday for his past use of the N-word after a video of him using the racial slur repeatedly on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast went viral. The 54-year-old said past episodes of his podcast contain things that I wish I hadn't said or had said differently. There's nothing I can do to take that back. I wish I could. Like, I got so many people to try DMT, man. I certainly wasn't trying to be racist, and I certainly would never want to offend somebody. Dude, you're a stand-up comic. for entertainment with something as stupid as racism. Dude, you're a stand-up comic. He also apologized earlier this month and pledged more balance after a string of artists, starting with Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, quit Spotify and accused him of spreading the Pinko-Pox misinformation on his wildly popular podcast. Yeah, he might be done. Because I'm losing respect for him, and I'm in the middle, by the way. Not in the middle, I'm like 20 minutes in, to listening to his talk with Peterson. Which, again, everybody knows I very much enjoy Peterson, not just for the aspect of listening to what he has to say. I do enjoy that a little bit because it's an easy psychological thing to put on in the background while you're talking. And I do need to journey to the belly of the whale to save my father. But it also gives me more material to where I can hone my Peterson voice a little bit. But on the other side of the news here, Joe Rogan returns to stand-up comedy. Most recent left-wing attempts to cancel him. Or mocks recent left-wing attempts to cancel him. So, you're going back out on the stand-up comedy tour. What are you going to joke about? Hey, you don't want to offend somebody. You don't want to offend anybody. What are you going to joke about, Joe Rogan? From Ryan Saavedra. Joe Rogan, the host of JRE, returned to stand-up stage this week in Texas, where he mocked the recent left-wing attempts to cancel him. Oh, video? No video. Included in the things that he mocked was the controversy involving his past use of a racial slur, which went viral several days ago after a left-wing group highlighted the instances where he used the word instances that Rogan says were taken out of context. I haven't used that word in years, man, Rogan said. But it's kind of weird. People will get really mad if you use that word and tweet about it on a phone that's made by slaves. The political left, including the Brandon administration, have pushed hard for a couple weeks to get Spotify to take action against Rogan for what they claimed was misinformation related to the pandemic. The controversy then moved from alleged misinformation to his past use of a racial slur, which led him to issuing an apology. Former President Trump said in a statement late this week that Rogan needed to stop apologizing to the political left because it made him look weak and frightened. And we read that quote already, so DeSantis got in on this here. Like I said, it's going to be really hard for me to take Rogan seriously now that he's come back out and said this, because a big part of the reason that I think a lot of people like Rogan, A, was because he was already popular from being on Fear Factor and making people eat buffalo testicles, but that he did, for the most part, come out and pretty much say whatever the hell he wanted. And if he did get multiple guests on, like when he had Tim and Dorsey on together, he just kind of threw a topic change in there once in a while, but kind of let the two of them get out of each other's way, or get out of their own way and talk to each other. He got out of everyone's way and just let the three of them, because it was, what the fuck is her name even? Bajaya? He let the three of them go back and forth and talk. So, I mean, he was good at what he did, and again, yeah, things are going to get heated. Words are going to be said. But just the apology, and I mean, it's never going to stop. Everybody knows it's never going to stop. And he does kind of look like a toe, doesn't he? But that's what I have to say on Rogan. Here's something that under any other administration would be all the way back over here. From CBS News, police looking for suspect after student stabbed and security officer and shot. After student stabbed and security officer shot outside of Buffalo High School. From Sophie Reardon. If I had to guess, I would say that there wasn't a scary composite black rifle that was involved with this. Authorities are looking for a suspect after a student was stabbed and a security guard was shot outside of Buffalo High School on Wednesday afternoon, CBS affiliate WIBB TV reports. Police earlier had said both the student and security were shot, but later said the student had been stabbed multiple times and the security guard had been shot in the leg. But none of this is the important part. The important part was everybody wearing their mask. The 14-year-old student was taken to a local hospital where he underwent surgery. He's out of surgery and recovering, WIVB reports. Security guard sustained non-life-threatening injuries. Buffalo Police Deputy Commissioner Joseph Gramaglia said during a press conference on Wednesday, he is in stable condition, WIVB reports. The incident allegedly happened after multiple people got into a dispute on the sidewalk outside of McKinley High School. The school had been dismissed 20 minutes prior to the stabbing and shooting, but 100 students were still in the building for after-school activities. Those students were placed on a lockdown, but they have since been upgraded to shelter in place. Gramaglia said. The deputy commissioners say they're still with the suspect. However, they cleared the school and surrounding area and said they do not believe there's a threat to nearby residents. Police tweeted about the incident around 4:15 p.m. local time, asking motorists to avoid the area around McKinley High School. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is also responding to the scene. Why? They should be prepping and setting up their convenience store. Nearby, Southern University of New York, Buffalo State College tweeted, a report of an armed person who was last seen at the high school near its campus. Students were asked to shelter in place for several hours Wednesday afternoon. The school canceled all evening classes and events. Byron Brown tweeted about the shooting, saying the city will continue to work to end the gun violence. Which they probably won't. They just probably will pass another law that bans guns in public places, in spite of the fact that the suspect in this had a gun into what was likely a gun-free zone. It does not say if it was a student that did this, or if it was somebody, it was a passerby. It just says multiple people were in a dispute. But yes, at this point, one of the things to look at is the fact that, you know, a school shooting would have been top news just a couple years ago. And now it's almost nothing. Let's see if there are any more details here. A 14-year-old student was stabbed multiple times and one security guard was shot Wednesday afternoon at McKinley High School, Buffalo Police told News 4. During the afternoon, authorities initially reported that the male student was shot. A Buffalo Police spokesperson now says the student was stabbed and not shot. The student was taken to Oishi Children's Hospital for surgery. He's been released. On Thursday, 27-year-old Brad Walker told News 4 he was the security guard who was shot. Walker, a Buffalo resident, says he's been working as a security guard for McKinley High School for about a month. Multiple shots were fired, and Walker says he was struck once in the leg. He tells News 4 he's thankful he wasn't struck in the bone or an artery. When the incident was taking place, Walker told News 4 he was running to the student who was being attacked to help, but shot before he could get to him. Gramaglia said he could not provide any other info on the student or suspect, who remains at large. He said as of 5:20 p.m. there were still more than 100 students on lockdown inside the high school, but he believed the immediate area around the school was secured. Dismissal was facilitated. So no words on, again, if the suspect was a student or not. That's what interests me. Was this a student, or did somebody just come in at some point and, out from the side of this, and after a fight start stabbing and shooting? I don't know. But we will see. Let's move on from the Blaze. Not enough memory to open this page. Red-haired bobblehead implies the U.S. government will not rescue Americans if stranded in the Ukraine. President Biden's botched pullout from Afghanistan taught us one thing: American citizens in the Ukraine should not depend on the U.S. for a safe return home. Press Secretary Red-haired bobblehead reinforced his sentiment on Wednesday when a reporter asked what happens to Americans if they do get stranded in the Ukraine. Should they understand the U.S. is not coming for them? Let's listen.
What happens to Americans if they do get stranded in Ukraine? Should they understand that the U.S. is not coming to get them?
Well, let's just take a step back here. First, we don't know that President Putin has made a decision to invade. We still don't have a new assessment on that, right? I'm obviously not going to discuss intelligence reports, which I think you also referenced. What I can tell you is that it's not just that the president or I have been conveying this warning to U.S. citizens. This is something the State Department has been doing for weeks and weeks and weeks now. I know there have also been a range of reports out there about American citizens. As you all know, because we've discussed this before, U.S. citizens are not required to register their travel to a foreign country with us, and we don't maintain a comprehensive list of U.S. citizens. That said, the State Department does estimates from time to time, and I know there have been much larger numbers out there, so I just wanted to reiterate for all of you that back in October, the State Department estimated there were, at the time, so months ago, about 6,600 U.S. citizens residing in Ukraine, not much larger than that. There have been, of course, there are periodic times during the holiday season where there are assessments of tourists and visitors and others, but in terms of citizens residing in Ukraine, many of which would be dual citizens. So what people should understand is that the United States does not typically do mass evacuations.
And again, we get the sidestep of the question. The U.S. doesn't do mass evacuations typically, and I mean, we don't even know how many people are there, so we can't do anything about it. Dude, if you're an American, well, if you're a U.S. citizen in the Ukraine, you probably have no idea that this YouTube channel exists. But if you are an American citizen in the Ukraine, it's time to get the fuck out of there. Because your warmongering president is doing everything that he can to make sure that this happens. He's trying to make sure that it becomes like fetch, except for fetch is never going to happen. But this stands in stark contrast to what she said yesterday that we had to skip because of the end of the show. We're ready either way, red-haired bobblehead says, Biden admin is prepared to handle whatever Putin does next. Let's listen.
On Ukraine, Zelensky's office said yesterday that a diplomatic solution seems much more likely than war. And then we saw Jake Sullivan say yesterday that an invasion could come at any day. Can you help us square the difference here and why there still seems to be such a stark difference in assessing the threat?
Well, what our national security advisor also conveyed during some interviews with a range of your networks yesterday was that we're pursuing a two-track approach, which includes deterrence and diplomacy, but that we are ready either way for whatever decision President Putin might make. And we don't have a new assessment of his decision and where he stands on it. We also need to be prepared. Being prepared is exactly what we can do from the U.S. government in coordination and in partnership with our NATO allies, our partners in Eastern Europe, and of course the Ukrainians. And that is what we're focused on. So we don't actually see it as a conflict.
Is Kiev wrong then on this?
In terms of the preparations,
The
or
diplomatic solution being more likely than war? It seems hard to square that with Sullivan saying that an invasion could come at any day.
well, I think we certainly would prefer a diplomatic solution. I think that's everybody's preference and everybody's hope. But again, this remains up to President Putin to make a decision about which path he's going to take. We don't have an assessment of that. So what our focus is on is preparing for a range of contingencies, including in coordination with the Ukrainians, making sure they have the supplies they need, the humanitarian assistance they need, the security assistance they need, and we're doing that. We're doing that consistently, even while we are closely watching the buildup of troops on the border.
Yeah, the thing is, and that's what she says, we're prepared for anything that Putin does. Well, I guess if it was me, and I was the leader of the free world, or the mouthpiece for the leader of the free world, I would not consider myself prepared for anything that anybody does, unless I was prepared to get all the people who have been placed under my charge as the chief executive of the country, out of the country that I'm trying to start a war with. I don't know. That's just me. From Fox News. Apparently this got screenshotted with couldn't get more replies, try again. All over the fucking place. Cory Bush won't drop to fund the police, though Dems fear it's poison at the polls. From Michael Lee, there's the author. Rep. Cory Bush of Missouri is refusing to back away from the defund the police slogan, despite pushback from its members of her own party who fear political consequences from its use. I always tell fellow Democrats, if you'd have fixed all this before I got here, I wouldn't have to say these things, Bush told Axios on Tuesday. The Progressive Squad members' comments to defunding the police comes amid growing concern about the 2022 midterm elections among members of the Democratic Party who fear defund the police rhetoric may have led to disappointing results in the 2020 election. But Bush said the party needs to do a better job of explaining to voters what it means to defund the police, arguing that some funding could be better spent on preemptive social services. The Missouri Democrat also dismissed concerns about Democrats losing this year's election, saying a defeat should be blamed on the party's inability to pass sweeping reforms such as Biden's Build Back bullshit legislation. Ooh. Well, that's not going to make Nancy very happy, is it? Defund the police is not the problem, Bush said. We dangled the carrot in front of people's faces and said we can get it done that Democrats deliver when we haven't totally delivered. If Republicans take the majority, it's just done as far as trying to get the legislation across, she added. Bush's comments come as violent crime has been on the rise throughout the U.S. in the past 2 years, with murders rising 5% last year and 44% since 2019, according to a Council on Criminal Justice study. I think that Cory Bush should be on every news show until Election Day. Every single one. And I am, by the way, in favor of less funding for police. And the other side of this is Cory Bush is in a position where she can start repealing laws so we don't need to have so much police. Because that's going to be where the start of it is. If we have fewer laws, we don't need as much police. Something that they don't seem to get. We need as many laws because people like Cory Bush, or Cory Bush's predecessors, let me rephrase that, because she is fairly new to the House. But people like Cory Bush's predecessors have put so many laws and regulations on the books that you can't step outside or even sometimes be inside without committing, they say, statistically, 3 felonies a day. But I think Bush should be on every late night and news program from here until the end of the election. Put her on Colbert. Rotation. 3 nights a week on Colbert. 2 nights on Fallon. Another 2 nights a week on Kimmel. Just every day. Put her on Outnumbered. Let her go talk about that with Harris Faulkner. She has all the answers. Let her go back and tell us. From the Daily Mail. Republican Rep. Troy Nells claims Capitol Police disguised as construction workers snuck into his office to take photos of his files after he was picked for the GOP panel to investigate the January 6 security failures. From Elizabeth Elkind for DailyMail.com. Troy Nells claimed on Tuesday that he was the subject of a U.S. Capitol Police investigation that saw officers dressed like construction workers snooping around near his office. A U.S. CP officer allegedly entered the Texas lawmaker and sheriff's office without his knowledge. When discovering the door left open, Nells detailed in a statement to the reporters. He said the alleged incident happened on November 20th of last year after being deeply critical of security failures at the Capitol on January 6th of 2021. Nells accused the top ranks of Capitol Police of putting a target on his back, singling out Chief Thomas Menger specifically, claiming he lied by stating members of Congress were not subject to criminal probes. A formal investigation into the matter was opened by USCP Inspector General. He announced, Capitol Police leadership have put a target on my back, but my work in exposing the security failures on the 6th, the death of Miss Babbitt, should she have existed, and the sham investigation into the events of January 6th will not be deterred, he told reporters in a statement. Nels was one of 5 Republicans who was nominated by House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy to serve as the House Capitol Riot Committee. The nomination was withdrawn in protest by McCarthy after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi objected to Trump allies Jim Jordan and Jim Banks being on the panel. Well, I hate to say it, but if the USCP, and I'm not going to put that outside of the purview of USCP, by the way. Remember, they can't be FOIA'd. I'm not going to put that outside of there, but if this happened, and I don't know if it did or not, if this happened, you do have to remember that the people who are in the USCP, that wouldn't be a criminal probe, that would be counter-espionage. To make sure that what they did, if something did happen, that was untoward, never gets discovered. But we'll see what happens with that. Let's grab one from The Hill. The North Carolina Elections Board says it has the power to bar Cawthorn from running over January 6th from Lexi Lonis. And this is what their actual discourse is. They don't care about what happened on January 6th. A citizen died. They don't care about that. She was a little person. They don't even care about the people on the front lines who honk honk killed themselves to the back of the head or had strokes honk honk after all of this, after they saw everything off of this, which I still don't believe any of that either. If you believe that Ashley Babbitt was there, ever existed, and passed away on the day of the Selfie Fest, these people don't give a fuck about that. They don't give a fuck about the forceful taking of the U.S. government. They don't care about any of this because they know they have nothing here. This is all a ploy to get people like Madison Cawthorn, like Lauren Boebert, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, if she's not a plant, to not be able to run for office because they can't beat them in general elections. They have to go back and bar them and then go put somebody up in the primary who is a little controlled opposition shill. The North Carolina, let's see. The state does not judge the qualifications of the elected members of the U.S. House of Representatives and polices candidates' qualifications prior to the elections, the board wrote in a filing to dismiss a lawsuit brought by Cawthorn. In doing so, as indicated above, the states have long enforced age and residency requirements without question, and with very few, if any, legal challenges, the state has the same authority to police which candidates should or should not be disqualified per Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, the board added, which they do. That is correct. But why would they? You have a person who's ready to represent the people. Why don't you let the people decide who they want representing them? Cawthorn filed a lawsuit after the group of liberal activists began attempting to get him barred from office due to what they say were disqualifying actions leading up to the Capitol Selfie Fest. Look, if they were that bad, he'll get punished in the primary. Which that's going to start coming up here in the next couple months. Leading up to the riot, Cawthorn repeated former President Trump's false election fraud claims, honk honk, and spoke at a rally hours before the riot began. Opponents of Cawthorn say he engaged in the insurrection, which disqualifies him from the office because it violates the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Why don't you let the people decide? But we can't do that because they might decide wrong. From the Blaze. Remember that thing yesterday when we said that Rochelle Walensky is so adamant that the school masking shouldn't stop? Well, they must have sat her down and had a little talking to with her over the past 24 hours. CDC director defers to Democratic governors on ending mask mandates, says federal guidelines won't change. From Chris Pandolfo. Biden admin health officials said Wednesday that it's still too early for states to ease school mask mandates as Democratic governors are finally catching up to their Republican peers and ending masking requirements. At a press briefing on Wednesday, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky was asked if her agency's masking guidance would be updated now that several states are acting to lift their mandates. We certainly understand the need and desire to be flexible, and we want to ensure public health guidance that we're providing meets with the moment that we're in. Walensky said. She added that while falling COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations are encouraging deaths, and hospitalizations are still too high for the CDC to change its masking recommendations. Which means, once again, somebody took Dr. Walensky into a room after what she said yesterday and said, "Look, bitch, here's the reality. The masking is massively unpopular right now. We are going to lose in the midterms. And if we lose in the midterms, you are going to disappear. And if you keep talking like this, you are going to disappear. So go back into your office, shut your fucking mouth, and let us be political strategists." Yeah, Walensky, who is double masked, by the way, look at that. Walensky was taken into another room and silenced. From Politico, malicious poison. GOP senator slams Biden anti-Semitism envoy to pick for criticizing his January 6th rhetoric. And look at that. It's Mr. I am in solidarity of term limits, so I am only going to run for 2 terms in the Senate, except now I'm going to go run for 3. Ron Johnson. From Andrew Desiderio, Senator Ron Johnson on Tuesday accused President Biden's nominee to serve as the top U.S. anti-Semitism envoy of engaging in malicious poison after the renowned Holocaust scholar called out the Wisconsin Republican for white supremacy. He's not a white supremacist, and shame on you, Deborah Lipstadt, for bringing that up at this point. That just shows that you have nothing. Ron Johnson is a lot of very bad things. He is a very stupid senator. He's a very greedy senator, and he's a senator who will do anything to go back and line his pocketbook. But he is not a white supremacist. He has done a great many things that are questionable or outright wrong. But white supremacy is not one of them. That's one of the few crimes that he has not committed. So, as our friend Brady Leonard said earlier, you can put that in your government-issued Joe Biden crack pipe and smoke it. This is on Deborah Lipstadt, the Emory University professor nominated last year to serve as the State Department's special envoy for monitoring and combating anti-Semitism. That sounds like a violation of free speech. Has faced scrutiny from Republicans for past public criticism of what she identified as dangerous rhetoric, including occasional callouts of specific lawmakers like Johnson. Republicans had demanded additional vetting of Lipstadt, causing a 6-month delay of her consideration by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Yeah, this all sounds like a position that shouldn't exist. Let's keep going. From The Blaze. Georgia House has passed a proposal to place a statue of Justice Thomas at the state capitol. Democratic lawmaker says that black people consider Thomas a hypocrite and a traitor because he doesn't do the Democrat thing. Because of the color of his skin, he has to just fall in line with whatever everyone else is doing. But for whatever reason, that's not racist. From Alex Nitzberg. The Georgia State Senate voted on Monday in favor of placing a statue of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas at the state capitol, a move opposed by Democratic lawmakers. The proposal, which passed 32-21 along party lines, still needs to pass through the Georgia House before it can head to the governor, according to Fox 5 Atlanta. The statue would be paid for by private donations, according to the Associated Press. I think I have a pretty intimate knowledge of how we black people as a collective feel about Justice Thomas, Democratic State Senator Nikki Merritt said ahead of the vote, though she prefaced the remark by saying that she does not claim to speak for all black Americans, except when she's trying to. We think that he's a hypocrite and a traitor. So if you're not speaking for all African Americans, is that the royal we that you're talking there? Merritt said that it seems like white America desires to promote Justice Thomas, but she suggests that Thomas undermines the struggles of black people. Thomas, who was born in the Peach State, was nominated by H.W. and has served on the High Court for more than 3 decades. Breyer plans to retire later this year, giving President Brandon his first opportunity to nominate someone to serve on the nation's highest court. The president said that he plans to abide by a campaign promise to make a diversity hire. So that's what we see coming up with that. Let's grab one from ABC 7. Some coronavirus stuff. Man, we're up on the clock, but we still have thing I like and 2 things that I hate. Well, 1 thing I hate, but it's 2 tabs. Thing I like and thing I hate. Coming up here. Surprise, surprise! The coronavirus is becoming less popular. And Kathy Hochul got into the mix here. Governor Hochul lifts vaxxer mask mandate for New York businesses, keeps it for schools. From Candace McOwen. Governor Hochul announced the end of the indoor mask mandate in New York State effective Thursday, but a city and school mandate will remain in place. The state mandate had required masks to be worn inside businesses where vaccination status was not being checked. The mandate will remain in effect at homeless shelters, healthcare centers, state-run nursing homes, correctional facilities, schools, and daycares. So basically, just state facilities will still have the mandate. But they're realizing that nobody gives a fuck about the private businesses mandate. And you'll still have it in New York City, too, by the way, because that is a municipality mandate, not a state mandate. Eric Adams has to go back and do the one for the municipality. We saw it coming. It happened. We hit our peak on January 7th, but now we notice a 93% drop in cases, Hochul said. That's exactly what we've been waiting for. The governor said indoor requirements would be left to cities, towns, and businesses across the state. This is your prerogative, Hochul said. New York City will maintain its citywide mandates that require proof of vaccination to enter restaurants, theaters, and arenas. We are continuing to follow the science and the guidance of the public health professionals to keep New Yorkers safe, said Fabian Levy, a spokesman for Eric Adams. We encourage all New Yorkers to continue to wear high-quality masks when indoors or in crowded spaces and to get vaccinated and boosted to stop the spread. Yes, it does seem like this is, as it becomes less and less popular, now it seems to be time to go start lifting this stuff. Because now we need to look like heroes. Now, we need to come back and look at this and say, it's time. Because the midterms are coming up and we need to do something at the end to make it look like President Brandon ended the pandemic. And if we still have masks everywhere and vaccine requirements, it looks like the pandemic is still in full swing. A lot of people are asking what's going to happen to Dr. Fauci because of this, which is not a bad question, actually. Because he's been wrong on this entire thing, and it's been documented. Everybody knows that he's been wrong with this entire thing. And I don't know, because he is going to try, because he's trying to stay famous and relevant and rich, if this is going to become, well, okay, I'm going to change my mind here, and we're just going to forget about anything that ever happened here, and we're going to walk this back, or if he's going to double down on this. And, I mean, the other question is are they going to make him accountable for what it was that he did? Which is probably not, but we'll see what happens off of that. But I will say this, before we move into this last one here, and then we'll go into thing that I like and thing that I hate. What I will say is this off of this is, I know what's coming. I've been analyzing politics and news and strategy for a little over 3 years now. And I know why we're doing this, why this is happening, why we're starting to see this. And what I understand from what I'm about to be is one of the taglines and one of the campaign promises that Biden made. They have to manufacture a campaign promise for him to make at this point here, because they have literally nothing else. And we see this in the sub 40 poll numbers that just came up. And they're probably scrambling to find a cherry-picked poll to come and bring that back up above 40, because they cannot let that continue to go. But this is manufacturing a campaign promise. I'm going to shut the virus down. I'm going to end the coronavirus. All the lockdowns, it's all going to end because of me, because of my policies. And they know, just as we see with Hopeful and everybody else, that the buck stops on this one. The actual decisions being made are being made at localities and state levels. Eric Adams is keeping his mask mandate on. Kathy Hochul is repealing it. Eric Garcetti isn't the mayor of Los Angeles anymore. The mayor of Los Angeles is keeping the mask mandates, but Gavin Newsom is starting to let some of them go. Gavin Newsom is going to be slow to let everything go because he is on a massive power trip right now. But we are seeing these mandates end because now we need to come back. That's what they need to have flashed across the television all day, every day, from here until Election Day this year. President Trump killed 1 million people, 800,000 people. President Biden saved us all from the pandemic. They need this. Otherwise, they are going to be carried out on spits with torches come Election Day. Figuratively speaking, Susan, don't ban me. All right, and the last one here, then we'll do a thing I like and thing that I hate. From the Blaze. Mass Catholic School apologizes for serving fried chicken to students to observe Black History Month. By the way, I know people that went to this school. I know one person. I know somebody who went to this school. I didn't catch this at first, but as soon as I saw the sign, as I opened this article back up to read it, I looked at the sign. I know somebody who went to this school. An all-boys Catholic high school in Massachusetts apologized for observing Black History Month by serving fried chicken to the students. We're deeply troubled and disheartened by our failure in this instance, and we take full responsibility for it, read a statement from Jacob Konka, head of Severian Brothers High School in Westwood. I offer my sincere apologies for the harm that our actions may have caused. Konka explained that the suggestion to serve fried chicken had been made by African-American cafeteria worker who asked to share a piece of culture by creating menu items that represent historically Southern Black cuisine. Some of the students were offended by the incident because it's in Westwood, Massachusetts. Jeez. Honestly, I think it's just a big stereotype. It could be seen as a little racist, said senior Liam Baker to WCVP TV. It's the first day of Black History Month. They could have come up with a better thing than fried chicken for African cuisine. It doesn't really make any sense. So, I want to push back on this just a little bit. Just a little bit I want to push back on this because, I mean, one of the things that Black culture has given to the rest of our country is a deep love and understanding of soul food. And yes, it has been adopted by all kinds of other cultures at this point. We all fry chicken at this point. Hell, I burned my kitchen down because of it. But we've all fried chicken at this point. I mean, it's not an exclusively Black thing. But it is the kind of soul food. And I would be curious to see what the other things on the menu were for this as well. Was it just fried chicken? Did they have collard greens and cornbread with it? I mean, was this actually soul food, or did they just make fried chicken? Because I'm willing to bet, given what I know about the Westwood area, that a few people got offended for the sake of getting up on TV and being able to come up and virtue signal about this, when in actuality, this was a real soul food menu. Like they had the rest of the stuff. He just saw the fried chicken and said, hey, I can get famous for coming out here and saying, I'm highly offended. And honestly, I bet you it was delicious. So, that's what we see coming off of that. All right, and now we're going to close out the show with a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. So, I've been thinking, because I always do like my Netflix shows and everything, but I do a lot of Spotify listening too at work, since I'm not allowed to do podcasts at work anymore. because I listen to the already conservative one. So I can't like have a podcast on in the background that's out loud, because just in case I listen to the already conservative and he says cunt on the air. I can't do that. So I was told that I had to listen to if it was spoken word through headphones, which is lame. But I throw music on still, and of course it's always Spotify. And I rediscovered a band that I actually liked when I was younger, when I was in my 20s. Silver Sun Pickups has been one of my favorite bands for the last few weeks. Just, I can't get enough of them. I do throw the lo-fi on every once in a while, but, you know, I like this band. And it's nice. It's a nice step between rock and the lo-fi kind of music, the calm kind of music that I like. They are a band out of California. As somebody who's always admired bass players, and somebody who has hoped to become a bass player myself at some point, I really enjoy Nicky Moniger's bass playing. I think that's part of the big hook of the band here. So we're going to listen to a little bit of this here. This is a live performance, and I hope that we don't get popped on YouTube for this. So I'm going to cut it up just a little bit as we go, but I hope this just comes down into a demonetization and not anything else off of this. But I'm going to give you a little sample of their music here. I hope you guys go back and out and find them. It is the Silver Sun Pickups, and this is them playing Growing Old is Getting Old at Interface AOL, which, when's the last time you heard about AOL? Let's have a listen. And we'll actually stop that right there, because I skipped that ahead a little bit too. And one of the things, especially a lot of the songs that they do, not all of them, because they have changed styles through albums, from like album to album. It changes style here and there. But one of the big hooks that Silver Sun Pickups does is that the songs slowly increase in intensity from beginning to end. Like, this was kind of a calming, slow song at the beginning. But even there, jumping a minute ahead, you can already kind of hear that there's an increase in intensity.
Maybe we're sealed in silence. Maybe we feel the guidance. Maybe our own devices.
And then we come ahead a little bit further. And we're moving up into the intensity off of it. And a little bit further into the end. And then they can fade back out in the calm. So, I mean, if you haven't heard of this band, definitely go back and look them up. They've got a Spotify playlist. They're not mad at Rogan. They didn't yank their music off of this. The other one here, but this is the official recording, which will probably pop copyright on YouTube for sure. Panic Switch is the first song that I heard from them. It's one of my favorites, of course. The bass line is second to none. You'll notice that as you hear it throughout this. So go back and check out Silver Sun Pickups if you haven't already. Give them another listen over on Spotify if you have, if it's been a while. And actually listen to their full back catalog. It's really good. I mean, they're known for a couple different songs. They're known for Lazy Eye and Panic Switch. But I mean, their entire catalog is amazing. I do apologize in advance, though, because there are a lot of remixes that went along with their music, too. So if you're not into that kind of music, like the EDM and hip-hop stuff, you might run across that on the Spotify playlist. But, I mean, still give it a listen. It's still pretty good. And now for a thing that I hate. Tweeting from NPR. Some white people may choose the yellow thumbs up because it feels neutral. But some academics argue opting out of a white thumbs up signals a lack of awareness about white privilege, akin to society associating whiteness with being raceless. Are you fucking kidding me? If you choose the wrong emoji, it's because you're a white supremacist. NPR has actually gone that far. And since they conveniently left me the article, we're going to read this. Which skin color emoji should you use? The answer can be more complex than you think. And we can only give you this sort of racially charged information if you hit that donate button and let us buy more of these quiet microphones that we can spread our communist ideals through, because we are never printing reality. NPR, National Progressive Radio. This is from Alejandro Marquez Janse, Patrick Jaranwatananan, and Asma Khalid. Heath Rosela identifies as 3/4 white and 1/4 Filipino. When texting, he chooses a yellow emoji instead of a skin tone option because he feels it doesn't represent any specific ethnicity or color. He doesn't want people to view his texts in a particular way. He wants to go with what he sees as the neutral option and focus on the message. I present as very pale, very light skinned, and if I use the white emoji, I feel like I'm betraying a part of myself that's Filipino. Rosella of Littleton, Massachusetts said, but if I use a darker color emoji, which may be more closely matching what I see when I look at my whole family, it's not what the world sees, and people tend to judge that. That's not what I'm judging right now. It's the rapidly, massively dropping IQ level that you seem to be demonstrating. That's what I'm judging right now. I don't give a flying fuck what color your skin is. I really don't. But I think you're a moron. In 2015, 5 skin tone options became available for hand gesture emojis in addition to the default Simpsons-like yellow. Choosing one can be a simple texting shortcut for some, but for others it opens a complex conversation about race and identity. Why? Why? Please explain this to me. I use the brown one that matches me, said Sarai Cole, an opera singer in Germany. I have some friends who use the brown ones too, but they are not brown themselves. This confuses me. That's because you have put too much thought into this. Cole is originally from California and identifies as black and an American descendant of slavery. She said... Wow. I can't believe I just read those words out loud. She said that while she was not offended when a non-brown friend used a dark emoji, she would like to understand why. I think it would be nice if it is their default, but they're just using it with me or other brown people. I would want to look into that deeper and know why they're doing that, she said. Jennifer Epperson from Houston identifies as black and said she changed her approach depending on who she was talking to. I use the default emoji, the yellow toned one, for professional settings, and when I use the dark emoji for friends and family, she said, I just don't have an emotional capacity to unpack race relations in the professional setting. And this is the part that got to me. Is the yellow emoji really neutral? A 2018 study published by the University of Edinburgh looked at the use of different skin tone emojis, what it referred to as modified emojis, on Twitter to find out if the modifiers contributed to self-representation. Alexander Robinson, an emoji researcher at Google and PhD candidate involved in the study, said the emoji modifiers were widely used, but it was people with darker skin who used them in higher proportions and more often. Instead, some white people may stick with the yellow emoji because they don't want to assert their privilege by adding a light-skinned emoji to a text, or to take advantage of something that was created to represent diversity. Perhaps, like Keith Rasela, they simply don't want to think about how their message could be interpreted. But Zara Rahman, a researcher and writer in Berlin, argues that the skin tone emojis make white people confront their race, as people of color often have to do. For example, she shared Sarai Cole's confusion when someone who is white uses a brown emoji, so she asked some friends about it. One friend who is white told me it was because he felt that white people were overrepresented. Oh my god! In the space that he was using the emoji, so he wanted to kind of try to even the playing field. Robin said, "For me, it does kind of signal a lack of awareness of your white privilege in many ways." Rahman, who in 2018 wrote the article for the Daily Dot, "The problem with emoji skin tones is that no one talks about," also challenges the view that the yellow emoji, similar to the characters from The Simpsons, is neutral because on that show there were yellow people, there were brown people, and there were black people. She said there was a default society to associate whiteness with being raceless, and the emojis gave white people the option to make their race explicit. I can't right now. I feel like a stereotypical millennial. I can't even, but I mean, I'm serious. I can't. I can't wrap my brain around this. I completely hear some people are exhausted from having to do that. Many people of color have to do that every day and are controlled with race every day, Rahman said. But for many white people, they've been able to ignore it, whether it's been subconsciously or consciously their whole lives. There you go. The dumbest fucking thing you'll read all day. Using a yellow emoji is racist. We're done. I can't do this anymore. I can't. You've broken me, NPR. You've broken me. You've officially broken me. I can't. At least you can listen to DJ Cutman until he gets determined to be racist because he's a white hip-hop guy. I have no words right now, you guys. This is probably going to get clipped and put on somebody else's channel at some point, too. Let's get out of here. So, now that we've been thoroughly black-pilled and you've seen the depths of me, wondering why I want to continue to be in this space and analyze this complete bullshit, we're going to head out of here for the day. Aren't you excited? We'll be back here tomorrow with more contemporary. And by the way, make sure that you get those last-minute messages in if you're just lurking, because then we can come in and say thank you to you for chatting in the live chat. I will have names written down of everybody by tomorrow, so I can say a special thank you to everybody who chatted through the live chat. So come back and join us tomorrow for more contemporary. We've still got a lot of news to go over here, so we will see you then. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.